Okay, good evening. Today we are doing the Gayatri Mantra. Actually, I'm not going to tell you the Gayatri Mantra because I think everybody knows about it. The question is important, so I have just taken it up today so that you will get an understanding of what exactly and how this entire thing works. You have definitely read the meanings also, and there are so many meanings out there, so I'm going to take only one from it. I'm going to just read the English version of it so that you get an understanding. Everybody says it in Sanskrit. I will give you an explanation in English. Okay, so the question which was asked is, why is the Gayatri Mantra so important? It is said that even Ram and Krishna also said it. It finds mention in the Guru Charitra too. What are the spiritual dimensions of Gayatri Mantra? Gayatri Mantra is broken down in a particular manner. I will just read the whole thing out to you in English. And this is the way in which Swami Sivananda many of you know Swami Sivananda. He's no more. He's from the Divine Life Society. So what is the explanation that he had given? He had said, let us meditate on Ishvara and his glory, who has created this universe, who is fit to be worshipped, who is a remover of all sins and ignorance. May he enlighten our intellect. So this is the basic explanation which he had given. But if I have to break down the entire mantra and the significance of it, and why is it that people say this throughout the day? It can be said whenever you want to. In certain societies in this world, like say for example the Balinese Hindus, they say the mantra 3 times a day, somewhere at 6 o'clock in the morning, afternoon and evening. So there are 3 times when this mantra can be said. Now, do you need to be initiated by it? Not necessary at all. This is a general mantra which can be said. It's exactly like the Maha Mantra of Krishna, as they call it, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It is exactly like that. Again, you can say this anytime. In it, there is no such specific requirement as such. So it's a general mantra, but it has got a lot of energy in it. So I will explain the energy aspect of it and why is it connected to human beings and what are the spiritual dimensions to it. So if I have to take the first word of the mantra, it starts with the word Om. So the moment the word Om comes into the picture, what exactly do we visualize in this universe? The divine, isn't it? It is the Parabrahma, it is way beyond our normal canon understanding, it is beyond. The second one is the physical plane, Bhut. The third one is Bhuva. That means basically we are talking about the 3 planes in this universe. What are the 3 planes? We have the sky, the earth and the in-between. So the heavens also. And then he is addressing to that is God, Savitur, Ishwar. Now in case of Sivananda, he spoke of Ishwar. Why is it connected to Ishwar and not some other deity or divinity? Understand one thing, this mantra is connected to Savitri, Savitar. Now, this is the female entity connected to Brahmaji, if you remember this. I think we have already done an explanation of this, so we'll move on from here. Varnayam, that means to be worshipped. If you have to worship the divinity. The next word is Bhargo, which means when your ignorance or sin has to be removed, when you remove these things. Devasya, that is glory. Dhimahi, Dhiyo, Yo, and all this means meditate on the intellect which we get enlightened with. Now this is the explanation which Swami Sivananda had given, and I am going to just expound on this part of it. So when we talk of these 4 words at the beginning, what are we trying to say? Remember, this mantra can be said early in the morning before the crack of the dawn. We are exploring the reasons why this mantra can be said at the crack of the dawn. See, it said removing the ignorance, removing the veil of ignorance, or removing that darkness in our life. When we speak of removing of darkness, like I said yesterday, again I will repeat it, there are 2 times in a day when the earth moves around, and from darkness we come into light. That is a twilight time. And in the evening, when there is sun which sets, and then we move into night. So that time in between is extremely important for all human beings. Why would you say so? You may ask. So the reason is very simple. Between 2 notes, there is a gap. Between 2 neurons, there is a gap. Between every 2 breaths, there is a gap. So this gap is what we are actually trying to invade, go inside. When we are doing meditation, even when meditation is happening, the idea of meditation is to enter through that crack, the gap in between. What is this gap which we are talking about? If I look at the 3 worlds above, these 3 worlds are in the manifest realm. That means they are in the created world. So all these worlds are in the created realm. If I take the heavens, the earth, and the nether worlds, even if I take all these 3 put together, they are in the created realm. All the gods remain in the heavens. The earthlings, we stay on the earth, and then there is a nether world. But beyond this is that particular domain where the Om comes into the picture. And this is the very peculiar thing which we have to get at. So when a person meditates on the Om, or meditates on this mantra, or meditates inwardly, what is he attempting to do? He is attempting to try to bridge that gap in between, to go inwards. If you go towards science, it will also tell you something very peculiar. In between 2 neurons, there is a synapse, there is a gap in between. And the entire transaction happens in the gap. So what is there in that place? So this is the place which is beyond our ken and understanding. This is the unmanifest domain. Our job is to enter the unmanifest domain. And imagine, like I said, this is the magic part of it. When I say open sesame, the mountain opens and I can go inside, and then I can come out with the gold and the jewels. I think we have already done those things in the past. All those fairy tales, they talk about these magic words. Here also it is these magic words. They open this particular gap. Remember the time it is said. It is the gap that is more important. We have to enter that domain. When we enter into that, when we enter into the meditative state, or what we call as samadhi, absolutely in a state of samadhi, the body exists, but the man is not there. See, you will find that in most of the cases of the sages, you could touch their eyeballs or you could touch them and nothing, they would not show any recognition whatsoever. Why is it that they cannot show this kind of a recognition? It's simply because they have gone beyond. So when somebody who has entered this domain in between these two gaps, that particular place is called the unmanifest. The God that we talk of, the capital G-O-D, that we all try to attain, is that one. Is he inside of you also? 100%. In what form? He is called the Jeev Atma. We have done the Bhagavad Gita, we have done so many other scriptures, we are now doing the Dasabodha over here, we are doing the Uddhav Gita. Everywhere, whether it is Krishna or any other deity, divinity, sage, saint, what are they talking about? They are talking about going beyond your bodies. Beyond your bodies, that means you have to cross over from your subtle as well as the causal body and go beyond it. So there is nothing there. Again, if you go to Buddhism, Buddha says you have to enter the state of shunyata, nothingness. What is there? Nothingness is there. That is the state we all have to achieve even in meditation. The Gayatri Mantra helps us go to that domain through the power of the mantra. It is so powerful. Even if you say Om, it is more than enough. Nobody says that you have to just say Gayatri Mantra by itself. You can say just the Om part itself, but you should know exactly how to knock and open the door. Open the door of the beyond. So this is what it is trying to say to us. See, first it's talking about the Parabrahma, that is the Om, which is beyond. Then we are talking about the three levels. And this God which is beyond, the one who is beyond has to be worshipped. So if I think in terms of who is this God, what is his astitva, what exactly is he? He is called the Paramatma by few. In our world we call him by the name Krishna. Some other call him God Almighty, some other call him Father in heaven. Whatever name that you have, you can attain that. So we are talking about this God. We are not talking about somebody who is called a deity. Not the small g, not the small God. We are not talking about deities over here. We are talking about going beyond. So that God has to be worshipped. How do you worship that God? You can try any kinds of techniques that are prescribed. Those who attempt different methodologies. Let us say somebody is trying to attain that particular divine by means of what is called as a knowledge base. Let me assure you, when knowledge comes to you, it will also fill you up with massive ego. I know everything. The moment this I know everything comes into the picture, you know you have fallen down. People try other techniques. They try Karma Yoga. Now Karma Yoga is also very unique. It is extremely difficult for a person to be a Karma Yogi. See, we all require results, isn't it? We all are aspiring for results. I want the answer. And that is the reason why I am doing this. I want to attain certain glory. That is why I am attempting this. I want to find the answer to the greatest problems in this world. If I have to do certain courses in a university and the university doesn't give me a degree, you know how disappointed I am going to be. So I need the basis that even that white paper which they give is more than enough for me. So the end result is important for a normal human being. So think about it. If he is working for a company, an average human being who is a grahastha, who is working for some company, some organization, whatever the case might be, he might be working for a government services, he could be doing whatever job that he is doing, he might be doing business for all you care. Is he not interested in making money? He is going to say, I need money so that I can run my family. So the part of karma yoga goes out of the window. This is the thing which you need to understand. So these 2-3 aspects are gone out. Let us try to understand in terms of meditation. Whereas meditation is concerned, it is observed that when a person does meditation, he normally remembers everything. What are you supposed to remember if you have entered that gap in between? You are not even supposed to remember anything. For that matter, it is not even expected that you know that you have done that. But if you feel, I was meditating, I am going to meditate for half an hour, and you know the timing, you know everything, it is not called meditation. A meditation is a part of life where you really have no clue that you are meditating. Some of the religions in the world talk about dynamic meditation. You can try that also. You can be just walking around with a rosary in hand and you could be meditating. It doesn't matter. But have you entered that zone where the divine unmanifest is? No. This God that we are trying to attain, have you got it? No. So then the one path which is left is called the path of devotion. Now devotion to God, it's a simple path, but it has to be a single pointed devotion. Now single pointed devotion means you can't have any other person in between over there. And when devotion is concerned, love is also into the picture. So it's a part and parcel of love and devotion. But it all starts with the word faith. In the morning today I was asked this question, whether what is this? I have faith. So the word faith is a very tricky one. Let me tell you. When you say you have faith in someone, can you even question any aspect of that person? Suppose you have faith in your husband or your wife and they come home late. You see, it is this marriage is based on trust and faith and all those very, very nice, good words. I have faith on you. I have trust on you. All this thing is said. So if the person comes late or may not say any words, where were you? What were you doing? How something gone wrong in your office? What happened? How did it go? Blah, 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 blah. All the things. It happens. So where was the trust? So the trust is not there from either sides. The material worldly trust is like that. In the spiritual world, when a question of faith is concerned, a faith is absolute. And what is absolute faith? If now at 1:30 in the afternoon, at 1:23 to be precise, in Bangalore, there was a massive explosion. Today it happened. It was such a big bang, and everybody called up the control room and every other place, and they are all trying to find out what exactly happened. Everybody thinks because there were aircrafts flying on top, the fighter jets and all, so they think that it is a fighter jet. Somebody says it is something else, somebody says it is something else. Now think, When all this was going on, suppose if I have to tell you, you see, the aliens have landed. You know, the first thing that you will say, what? I saw the UFOs. It is a very tricky thing. You see, you cannot even say that first and foremost, are there aliens? Are there UFOs? And then the question keeps on growing in the mind. So if it rankles you, if your mind comes into play, if I say that it is 8 o'clock in the night, or it is in the morning, it's 5 a.m. in the morning just now, you will look at your watch and you will say, no, it is 5 o'clock in the evening. What are you talking? Faith is exactly like this. There is no question of, raising any doubt of any kind. Faith is a one word which you have to understand. Think that you are blind, deaf, dumb, and all your senses are not working at all. And you are being led somewhere. And the person says, this is a blue rose. You are deaf and dumb and all those things, okay? How can you say it's a blue rose? Think. Well, here the idea is God's world and the way in which the gurus teach, they are very peculiar in their approach. You know the way they will say it? It's a blue rose. You got to have 100% faith in it. Think about it. If a person says, if I say to someone that you have to catch a train right now and go, I can go by the next train or the next one. You see, my last train is there at 9 o'clock in the night. I will go at that time. But if I am telling you to leave right now and go by the train, it is important to leave right then. Not at 9 o'clock in the night. Do you think that the guru or the divine has no knowledge that there are other trains? Think. The divinity has clear-cut understanding about the future. Okay? And you got to trust and have 100% faith. So when the divinity is concerned, these are the 4 words that define it. First is called the faith, second is called the surrender, third one is called love, and then devotion. So this way, these are the things that are there in the path of devotion. You got to have this 100% faith. So when it is said in the Gayatri Mantra that this particular God has to be worshipped, the divinity, we are talking about the Father in heaven. We are talking about God Almighty. We are talking about Krishna. We are talking about the Parabrahma. Remember all these words. So if we have to do that, then we have to give him the power of attorney. The power of attorney, and believe in every word that is happening over there. Anything that is happening at that point in time has to be absolutely believed. There should be no doubt at all. And when you have no doubt, all your ignorance will be removed. Because if you have handed over the power of attorney to him, to the Lord, once you hand it over to him, it is his job to take care of you, not your botheration at all. So last night I was doing a satsang where it was mentioned, a mother says to a child, a small baby, that this is your father, this is your brother, this is your sister, these are your uncles and aunts. The child immediately believes in that, isn't it? The mother saying these words, the child believes immediately. He doesn't have to say, oh, how How can I say he's my father? You think that is how he's going to talk? No. And when the mother says, don't go in that room, okay? Why? Because there is a Rakshasa over there. You see, the child immediately believes in that. Human beings, as they grow up, as they grow up in life, by the time they are become, teenagers, they discount everything that their mother, father and the whole world says. You can take your own case. Your mother said something, do this just now. Why I can do it? Suppose she says, take out the trash. The person will not even get up from his place. If he is playing a video game, he is not even looking at it. His room will be in a mess. Everything is gone for a toss. Doesn't even get up in time. You know the kind of kids that are there. They forget listening to the same mother who they were trusting 100%. So Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to say, you got to trust this God. You got to trust this God who is the mother. And this is the mother's whose mantra we are doing just now. The Gayatri mantra is connected to mother. Alright? Who is this mother? Our heavenly mother. The one which we call Father in heaven also is the same one. It is just that we say mother for a simple reason, because we trust our mothers a lot. Isn't it? So, the one which has to be worshipped. And where do we see him? Even in the sun god, isn't it? When we are doing the prayers to the sun, the rising sun and the setting sun. You know the sun is not going anywhere. You are going somewhere. The sun is there only. It is literally stuck up over there. It is the earth is moving around it. And you think that, oh, the sun is going down and the sun is coming up. It is there. You are going around. Alright? So you are praying to the sun. The sun is the one which identifies with the divinity. Sun is equal to divinity. The one who removes the darkness from our life. So this much you got? Then remover of sin. Actually, when we say remover of sin, you have to understand something. Remember the gap again. Okay? If I am lost in that, the body is performing actions on its own. There is a very beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, the gunas perform in the gunas. It's a very peculiar verse again. What does it mean? You see, there are gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, and they are performing in the gunas. Everything that you can see, touch, feel, that is there outside of you is converted into these three. You see, when it is a rising sun, you can think of sattva guna, isn't it? When it has risen quite a lot, you will say it is rajas because it's time to go to work, make money. It is high noon, you want to take shelter. Maybe you want to go and sleep. Maybe you just want to take rest in the afternoon. Even the sun has got its three gunas. Is there anything in this world which doesn't have? You see, if I give you a laptop or a calculator also, it is not a calculator, what is it? A cell phone, and you see it has got three gunas in it. Either you can use it for good purposes. Next, you can use it for making money. There are lots of people who make money on the phone itself. And the third one, you can keep on playing games and, rot yourself. Yes. If you can make money by playing games also, yes. Then it is rajas and tamas, both combined. So I hope you understood. You get the gunas are working within the gunas. Alright. So the gap which is there, when I, the being, is lost in the self, in that gap, when I am lost in the self, the body reacts outwards, but since there is no mind in between, to give me the inputs and the outputs, IOs, what happens? No karma is formed. Because you are literally like a marionette, you are just performing. The body just performs. The sages do that. A sage may be eating food, You keep as much food in front of him also, he will finish that. He won't even know that he has eaten. Let me tell you this much. You keep little food in front of him, he will eat that much also and he will say, oh, thank you very much. And he will get up from there. Why is it so? Whereas in the case of any normal human being, he will keep on saying, no, I have not eaten. This is very less for me. So do you understand? This is called that particular thing. The formation of the karma doesn't happen with them because their mind is not there. So, what happens here? You have to go towards this higher intellect. That is here. You have to go towards the higher intellect. So, get out from this lower intellect of yours, go towards sattva and move beyond towards the higher intellect. See, in the Upanishads, there is a particular Upanishad where they talk about two birds, one sitting on top and one sitting at the bottom. The top bird is the one who is called the higher one, the self. And then there is the lower self. The lower self will say, I am tired, I am hungry, I am this, I am that. Keep on cribbing. But we have to attain that higher state. So here it is the idea of attaining that higher state. Right? Finally, what happens? When you attain that higher intellect, you are now in that gap. The intellect is not yours. It is called divine intellect. See, I will give you a very simple understanding. I have not touched any scriptures. Do you think that I have by-hearted some scriptures somewhere? No. I don't know anything. Who is talking over here? The knowledge which is coming to you, or the way in which I am expounding on these verses, or whatever that we are going to do after this also, this knowledge cannot be contained in this human body. This body is worthless. The knowledge comes from beyond. So there he says, that higher intellect which will lead us to the enlightenment, that is the enlightenment which we seek. So this mantra is an extremely important mantra, and I hope you got to understand this little spiritual dimension which is connected to, it is connected to achieving this state of enlightenment by using this mantra. Alright? It teaches us to rise from this lower level to the higher level and to attain the higher intellect and to go towards enlightenment. Okay, so we have come to the end of this particular question, answer. So now we will start with the Dasbodh. I'm sure you know Dasbodh, we are continuing with the misery of family life. I know it's a painful subject, but what am I to do? You see, when Dasbodh was being, told, Samartha Ramdas was expounding on this Dasbodh and it was getting written. There is a very beautiful cave in Maharashtra where he gave an exposition on this. There was a very great saint of Maharashtra and the guru of Shivaji Maharaj. So, yes, he knows more than all of us put together. So, we have to listen to what he says. So, he is saying the misery of family life. So, we are doing chapter 4 from the next Dashaka, the misery of family life, part 3. Sri Ram, many children are born and the goddess Lakshmi left the house. The poor family member became beggars. They could not get food to eat. Some children were toddlers, others were in the womb. One was in the womb, The house was full of sons and daughters. Expenditure increased day by day, and income which was expected became short. The daughters came of age and there was no money even for their wedding. This is a very common scene in the past. Today, people have a difficulty of even producing children, okay? I can assure you that much. Uh, Most of the people are trying to avoid marriages. If they get married, it's a short term duration, it's like a short term contract that you're signing and giving. The marriages have become like a rarity today, in today's day and age. And I was reading an article somewhere written by, I think, Big Thing, in that they said that hardly there will be any marriages. If that is a kind of prediction that is going on, means I don't know how children are going to be born. I think they will be, test tube babies somewhere, some place, like they showed in all those sci-fi movies. Okay, but in olden times, a family had too many children. Okay, my grandfather, of course, I think he had 7 or God knows how many. I have no idea. And there was no money at home. Absolutely none whatsoever. And my grandfather was a devotee of Sai Baba. So he quit everything. He left everything to Baba's care and he just vanished. He went to Shirdi and he said, Baba, you only handle whatever I have to. I am not going to bother my head about it. And he sat down over there. So that was his peculiar case. So here in this case, he's talking about a man who has got so many children and he has no money. All right. And now that he had daughters who had come of marriageable age. So daughters were of marriageable age. The sons had their own brides and the person was anxious how to get the daughters married. Now this is in olden times where daughters, even in to current times also, I cannot deny this fact that most of the places in India, though dowry is banned, it is not to be taken, not to be given, it's a crime. But in the name of dowry, all the wrong things are happening today. People gather a lot of money for getting their daughters married. I don't think it is right. The daughter is intelligent, she is good, and she is a person, she is not a commodity. I don't think we have to treat any woman as a commodity at all. We have to treat them with respect and not do this kind of a transaction which was done in the past. So, but here we are talking about a father who was very much entrenched into it because of societal norms. All right. The daughter was of marriageable age, the son had their own bride, the person was anxious how to get his daughters married. If they remained without marriage, again the public was there to criticize and say, why did they produce children? Poor from very birth. Suppose you have children, if you had a girl, and if you cannot get your daughter married, then the whole world would point fingers at that person and say, see, when you know that you don't have any money, why are you producing children? It's a very normal thing to say in the past. He was afraid that there will be public shame and a good name of his elders will be spoilt. He thought, who will give loan for marriage? The loan which was taken earlier was not yet repaid. Thus there was tremendous calamity, a constant anxiety, like a bolt from the blue. We eat food, but the food also eats us. He was very anguished mentally. Here, right in front of me also, there are many cases where not only have the parents borrowed a lot of money, but the girl herself has, she has borrowed herself. A lot of gold, jewelry, and today's rate of gold, if you go and see, I mean, it's a very big amount. And everywhere they ask for gold and jewelry and this and that and money and vehicles and houses and God knows all kinds of things. I don't know why they have to do this, but they do. Those who say that I have not taken any dowry, I have not done any of these things, go and ask their mothers and fathers. I think you will get a better understanding of that then. The subject is open for discussion. It's a very wrong thing. All his credit was gone, whatever was valuable in the house was mortgaged, and he was at the threshold of insolvency. The person had come to the state of insolvency. Some things were sold, some oxen and animals were sold, and some amount was raised by borrowing at a heavy rate of interest. Thus he was under the burden of loans, but made an outward show of keeping the fame of the family intact. Some of you may not identify with this, but there are lots of Indians who identify with this state. Please know that there are lots of Indians who actually identify with this state. It's not only Indians, it could be from other countries as well. You see, even when you go to the Middle East or Africa or Americas and all that, I'm sure there is a kind of a transaction that happens. When we talk of modern marriages, where nobody is involved, it's just an exchange of, maybe the rings and all that, and people get married. I don't know what kind of a commitments there are. If people are not involved, then there are, I think, very less commitments in life. But as the loan was big, those who gave him loans started harassing him. So he set out to go to other country. He absconded for 2 years, serving very lowly persons even at a menial, and suffered a lot of physical strain. But he earned something in the foreign land, and then he remembered his family members very much. So he asked for leave from his employer and returned home. Does it remind you of the Gulf states where a lot of Indians are serving over there so that they can send money home, so that, forget the Gulf state, even in Americas, there are lots of Indians who are sending money from there to here. Why? Yeah, I'm sure last year India collected $76 billion in transfers. It's the number one country in the world where expats, all the Indians who go abroad, they send money home. For what reason? So that their families can be taken care of. That is what. There are people who are working in the cities, they send money home. Why? Because they have to get their sisters married, they have to get their brothers married, their fathers and mothers are ill. There's a lot of pressure on all these people around. So they have to go to other places. Aren't we facing that today? There are lots of people in Bangalore from Orissa, Calcutta and all those other places. I'm sure every day when you read in the news these kind of things where so many people, they're trying to go back to their country, go back to their native places. For what reason? For this reason only. They have come to the city so that they can earn. So this man was doing exactly like that. Here his family members were very unhappy. They were waiting for him and saying to themselves, why is he so late? Oh God, what can we do now? What can we eat? Should we die of hunger? Why did you give us birth in this family? In this way they were only concerned about their own comforts and did not know his suffering. This was the state of affairs while he was strong enough, and he had been old and weak, nobody would have helped him. The young boys and girls who are there today, they are staying in small rented apartments. Take the case of China, take the case of India. China has got so many villages, The children over there, once they reach a certain age, they have been told very clearly, either you join the party or you go to the city and earn your living over there. They are staying in very despicable conditions. Here in India also it's the same scene. People come for thinking, they come over here to all the big cities thinking that they will get fancy jobs. And see, look at the condition in which they stay. They say in this PG accommodation, the food over there is pathetic. They have a bed which is, I don't know, whether it is made or not made. The clothes, you can just imagine how these conditions are. I'm sure even in big cities in this world, like say for example New York or say Los Angeles or Paris or London, it is the same scene over there. Those who come from the countryside, those who come to earn money in the cities, they have to go through hell. And here it's the same thing. And every time there is a demand for something or the other, I want some money to be sent, I want some money to be sent. And if the person doesn't have a job, then what is he supposed to do? See, this is a very difficult time, and now today when there are so many jobs getting lost, I really pity all those people. So we go back to our story. While they were thus waiting for him, suddenly they saw him coming. Children ran forward, calling, "Oh, Daddy, Daddy, you are tired. Come, come." The wife was happy to see her husband and said, "Now our poverty is over." Then the bundles and packages which he had bought were given to him, to them, by him to them. All the children were happy. They said, "Our daddy has come. See, he has brought me shirt, he has brought me cap." Some days were thus spent happily, but again they started discussing privately. If our father goes away again, we will become miserable. How many of you know this? Isn't that what is happening? A person goes and comes back for a shorter duration. There are lots of Indians who stay abroad. They come for 15 days, 20 days, and they are hardly at home. And in that 15 days or 20 days, there are people abroad who have not come to India for many years. Why? They may lose the visa. I mean, think about it. They are literally in a very bad position. But anyway, let us continue further with this case. If that was a case then, I think there is no difference now also, isn't it? It's the same case right now also. So, let what he has brought be kept here. He should again go to foreign lands and come again with more money by the time we finish this. Such was the desire of all family members. All were concerned only for their own comfort. The wife, who was supposed to be a loving wife, was also very selfish. Actually, the man was very tired in foreign land and had come home for some rest. But before he could have some respite, it was time again to go. He went to the astrologer and decided an auspicious day to go, but his attachment for his family was such that he could not bear the thought of separation. He somehow collected his things, took some amount useful on the way, once looked at his dear children and started back on his journey. He looked at his wife, became very unhappy to be away from her, but strings of togetherness had somehow to be cut. His heart was full of sorrow. He could not control his sobs. The children and their father were separated. He said, "If at all it is our destiny to meet again, we will see each other. Otherwise, this is our last meeting." So saying, he rode upon the horse but turned back again and again, his eyes searching for those inmates, but there was no use. When we look at this sad story, though it is set in a time in the past, but it is so true even today. There are parents who are working abroad. There are children who are working abroad. There are children, they're grown up, who are working in the cities. They go to their native places. They take certain things with them. They will say, "My father loves this, my mother loves this, my brother loves this, my children love this, my wife loves this." They all take stuff when they go. And when they go over there at home, everybody pounces on the gift. They don't even bother to ask him how was his stay over there, how was her stay over there. I'm saying it both from man and woman point of view. Nowadays, a lot of women are working in big cities. They are taking care of their families back home also. They send money. And they have their own difficulties the way they live. They actually are running from pillar to post every single day of their life. It's not only that they have to think about their parents or their children or their whoever they might be in the village, but they are also thinking of their bosses on one side. They have a miserable office life also. Wherever they are working, you think they are happy? Ask anybody in the IT companies or in any of the companies, the attrition rate, the rate at which people leave their jobs and picks up another one, is so high. Why? Because they are harassed in their offices also. And this is a very, very normal case. So you think this was not happening in the past? Here we are reading something which happened more than 500-600 years ago. He's talking about the same thing. He left his own village behind. His mind was confused and anxious by the trouble of his family life, and because of its attachment and pride, all the suffering was in the Lord. Then he remembered his mother and said, "How great was my mother! How great were the pains she took for me, but I did not know it then. What a fool I was." Then you may remember your own father and mother, thinking the way they took care. It is then that a person comes to know the importance of their own parents. And this family life is it's a life full of attachments. And then you feel, oh, my parents, they really worked very hard. They took loans, they paid money, they did so many things so that I can get better education. And here now I am going and doing the same thing which my father did, which my mother did. The same thing. There is no difference. Had she been here today, she would not have let me suffer so much. The real affection of mother is unparalleled. She would have cried out now, seeing me going. Even if the son is poor and a beggar, mother accepts him as he is and suffers herself by the suffering of her son. If we look at the state of affairs in any family relations, they can be had again by a mother, cannot be replaced by anybody else. Mother who gives me birth. Basically what he is trying to tell over here is the kind of affection and love which you get from your mother cannot be given by any other person. Got it? Even if a mother is not good natured or otherwise, she is a real one who cannot be compared with anybody else. What is the use of thousands of wives? But I was deceived by the Cupid. Because of this lust, we fight with our own people, and we feel that they are not friends but enemies. He further said that blessed are the family people who worship their parents and are not cruel with their relatives. In a family relationship, it is important to love and be loved also, isn't it? So you need to have the respect, you need to have that attention, the care which everybody is giving. And there are problems in lots of families. The brothers fight, the sisters fight, the mothers and the daughters, the mothers and the sons, the father and the son. There is always going to be a lot of friction there. But this is something which we need to forget. So he's talking like that. The company of wife and children is temporary, but parents will not be available again. I have heard this earlier, but at the time did not realize it, and my mind was indulging in the pond of passionate pleasure. These people appear to be very dear friends, but they are coming only for my money. Surely they are my enemies. I feel ashamed to go back without money. So if somebody goes back home without money, do you remember a case about Valya Koli? Okay, you will ask me, who is Valya Koli? The fisherman. Valmiki. Now you will say, yeah, I know Valmiki. You see, Valmiki would, catch hold of people and he would kill them so that he can take all that they had and give it to his wife and children. Imagine that was during Ramayana's time. And now we are today also doing the same thing. Can you go home without any money? No, you have to take a lot of stuff and then go home. Well, such is the case. Now I will do anything and will take home some amount, because if I return empty-handed, it is nothing but shame. He was brooding like this and was really drowning himself in deep waters of worry and sorrow. He again said, such is our body. While it is actually independent, it has become dependent because of such desires. I have turned my back on God and I have become ready to do any hard work for my family. One day I was talking to one of my disciples. I was telling him, I said, you know what? Your parents were your servant. They got money from here, there, everywhere and made you into an engineer, and then, I don't know, you did all the further education. Now what are you? I said, you are the servant of your wife and you are the servant of your son. You see, you have to fulfill every desire of his. He wants to go here and there, you have to fulfill. So finally, you have also become a servant. You think you are some father? I'm sorry, you are not a father. You are a servant to that boy and to that woman in the house. And now, servant to your parents also, or whoever they might be. Where is the independence? It's the same thing which I asked you all yesterday. Where is the independence? You cannot even leave and drop this and go anywhere. You know that? You see, when you have your parents whom you are sending money, when you have your wife whom you have to be faithful to, and now you have children, you see, by the time you become old, grey-haired and all that, that is the only time you will think of God. Otherwise, rest of the time you are servant of your family members. Please take it from me. This is the truth. You are working and you don't have any respite. You have to get the money from somewhere and you have to see to it that that family gets the money. Can you just drop your son who is in 4th standard or 5th standard and your wife over there and just run away? Can you do that? No. Can you just drop your parents over there and just walk away? No. This is a problem which everybody faces. But the man, then it strikes him very hard. I am a servant to everybody. And what are they giving me in return? Nothing. Nothing. They expect me to give money. So I told one day one person, I said, you know what? You send money home. For 2 months, don't send any money and see what happens. The next month itself, you will get 100 phone calls which will say, now you have forgotten us, you don't remember us, you know how we are living. This time we have to spend on our, medicine bills and this bills and, electricity never got paid and that never happened. And oh my God, the kind of things that you are going to listen to, you will say to me, I will rather pay. Guruji, don't tell me this. You cannot get out of this trap. You see, honey trap, money trap, whatever trap that you can think of, you can never get out of it. And that is the pathetic part of everybody's life, and this man is now understanding that. Alright. He said again, such is our body. While it is actually independent, it has become dependent because of certain desires. I have turned my back on God and I have become ready to do any hard work for my family. For this passion, the whole life is spent in hard work, and when one becomes old, one has to go alone. In this way, he repented, became dejected for a while, but again was caught in the net of Maya. He again remembered his son and daughters, and his mind was beyond limits of pathos, and he said, "Oh God, my own children are estranged from me." He remembered all the sufferings he had undergone from childhood and started to cry out loudly. I am sure you have also done the same thing. Your parents have also done the same thing, and your children are also going to do the same thing. When you are attached so much to everybody in this world, and this is the part of attachment which everybody has to go through. But in the wilderness, the cry was futile. There was nobody to give him a comforting word. Then he thought to himself, why should I cry now? I must face what is coming. Thinking thus, he took heart again. So in short, very unhappily, he left for another country. Now please listen to what happened next. Thus in the 3rd Dashaka of Dasbodh, in the dialogue between the Guru and the disciple, this 4th chapter by name, Misery of Family Life, part 3 is completed here. So we have come to the end of this, the misery of family life. I know you may not be liking most of what I have said, but that is there in the scriptures. So I'm just reading out that to you. And I'm sure you will agree with me. It's a part of our world. Alright? So take care, have a very great evening, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.